Okay, so I have two rifles, and I bought one, let me see, 2 years ago, and I bought this one this year. And I've done a quick review on this already. I guess the first showing. So this is my AMD63 by Clearview Investments. And I know that people say, well, that's a shitty gun. But you know what? For the purposes that I'm using it for, it's good enough. I don't give a shit about a washer. I don't give a shit about any of the high-end AKMs or variants. I bought this because I wanted it. If you don't like it, then go and watch another video. But for the purposes of me learning the AK platform, this is fine. So I bought this earlier in the year, and this is my first time firing it. Okay, it is December 28th. This is the first time I fired a rifle in a very long time. So I took it out to my local range, where I'm a member of. It's an indoor range. They have a 100-yard range inside their facility. So the first thing I did was I bought several 100-yard targets. The idea was to place it at 100 yards, but I found that these glasses here are because I can't see shit. So with the glasses on or off, I couldn't see beyond 25 yards with that particular target. And the target I'm specifically talking about looks like this. Here it is. And it is a 100-yard precision rifle target, if you see that on the top right there. So for zeroing purposes, I placed it at 25 yards. Some people may frown upon that, but if I can't see the target, then I can't zero, right? So again, the sight served. I mean, the target served its purpose. So if you notice, this is something that did not come with the gun. Originally, it came with this, and it looks like like that. So I took it off because I didn't like the foregrip. I ended up firing. So from the time I started zeroing to the time I finished it, so I rented the booth for an hour, right? The idea was that if I couldn't get it done within an hour, I would go back out and I would rent it again for another hour. So there was a good amount of people going in and out, and they won't let you rent the booth back to back if there's an influx of members. So when I saw that there was an influx of members, I was like, shit, I have to make sure that I do this in one session, or I'll have to come back tomorrow. So I got it zeroed, and it took me maybe 66 rounds. No, 36 rounds, because I went through one magazine. I took 4 magazines that were full. I got 4 30-round magazines. And then I took an extra 60 rounds of ammo with me that were still in the box. So it took me a little while to get the booth, because the first thing they asked was, what type of ammo are you shooting? And this is the first time I've ever taken any rifle to a range. So I told them 7.62 by 39. So they said, let me see the ammo. And what they did was they put a magnet on it and they tested it. And I told her, I was like, I'm pretty sure that's not steel core ammo. And what I'm using is Red Army Standard 123, 124 grain full metal jacket. Where's my box? So here's one box. So this is 7.62 by 39, 124 grain, full metal jacket, boat tailed. It says lead core. Lead core, steel case. It says nothing about steel core. It says lead core. And I pointed that out to her just to kind of let, I didn't want her kind of trying to single me out, and she saw it and she let me in. So it's cool. But anyways, let me show you the target here. And the first few, what I was doing was I was shooting in groupings of 3. So at 25 yards, and again, because I could not place it at 50 yards and still see the target, I could not place it at 100 yards and still see the target. And when I say target, I was focusing on this part. So at 25 yards, this, in my opinion, looked like that. So if you look closely here, I have these groupings numbered. So that's number 1. That was my first grouping. There's a triangle right there. Let me look at number 2. Number 2 is right next to it. That's the second grouping. So the first grouping I shot here. And then I said, okay, well, let me try to move the sights this way. So I did it, and I moved. I ended up moving this way. So it wasn't where I wanted to go. I wanted to go this way. The idea being that I would move it this way and then move it up. So what I was doing was I was moving the sights the wrong way. So when I finally figured it out, my third grouping was right here, and it's not really a triangle. It's 1, 2, 3. So after that, I started just kind of shooting, and as you can see, I moved even further, so I was right here. And I stopped keeping track of the groupings. I just started shooting. Most of them were here. So vertically, they were lined up, but horizontally, I needed to be moved up. So I started shooting. I started trying to adjust the sights. Now the sights when I say adjust the sights, I mean adjusting the wrist sights. So I got this one squared away, right? I didn't touch this yet, but you can manipulate this sight to where you can move the post left or right, and you can move the post up and down. So the gun is cleared, by the way. Oops. It's clear. Damn, right in my ear. So what I want to do is I want to show you the post here. So I'm not aiming at the camera. I'm aiming to the side. But what I want you to do is I want you to focus on the sight. Initially, the sight was it's more in the middle now. But if you look closely, the sight is moved this way a bit, just a tad. And initially, I started raising it up. That was the wrong thing. Now, if I think about it now, it was obviously the wrong way, because when you move sight post up, you're moving the muzzle down, right? So I finally figured it out, but by then, most of my bullets were hitting center, but very low, right? So, and some of those were actually hitting off paper. So what I did was I started bringing it down, and it still wasn't moving. It still wasn't moving at all. I had to stop, and I had to open up Chrome in my phone, and I did a quick search on how to sight an AK-47. I used that and the instructions that came with my sight tool, and I have the same one that Robski uses. I have this, and that's what I was using. But the instructions between both the article and the instructions for this, they were not the most descriptive. So it took me a while to figure out that I had to, when I was shooting, I had the sight adjusted all the way down. This thing here goes up and down. It was all the way back. So when I read the article, I saw in I guess all the text that it said, okay, when you start shooting, move it up to number 1. So I moved it up one notch, thinking it was number 1. Did some shooting, and it still wasn't moving. And then I looked again, and I was like, oh, I'm not on number 1. I'm on this. I was on A. So there's an A, and then there's a 1. So I put it on 1, and by then I had just a little bit of time left. Put it on 1, and then I moved the sight way down. I dropped it way down. So if you look at it, no, I'm not shooting you. Okay, this is the only way I can show you the sight. It's either that or I point it this way, and that ain't happening either. So I had to move it. It's about midway down, which is pretty kosher. And I had maybe 5 minutes left before I had to give up the booth. And so I shot 2 groups. The first group was like this. You see that line? So I was rushing. I rushed that one, and I kind of knew it. I knew that it was going to be off. So the last 3, I kind of just took my time. I said, blam, blam, blam. So that's maybe a 1 inch. That's a 1 inch group. And if you look at some of these other ones here, that one and that one, those are 1 inch groups as well. So it shows that my fundamentals are pretty decent. It shows that that wasn't my issue. The issue was me sighting in the weapon. So that's pretty good for a first session, and that's how I ended it. So I was actually in the bullseye. I could afford to kind of raise it up a little bit more, or raise the post, put the post down just a tad. But that's pretty good. So again, this is at 25 yards. This is shooting Red Army standard 124 grain FMJ boat-tailed ammo. The gun shot no fire. The ammo was pretty good. Didn't jam one bit. I didn't notice anything. The only thing I noticed was that I started feeling heat around here, and that I wasn't even rapid firing. But it wasn't so hot that I couldn't change the the sight picture, right? Not sight picture. I couldn't adjust the sights, right? So it was good in that regard, but I could start feeling heat here, just a tad, and I wasn't shooting with gloves. The trigger is actually pretty damn good. Just a little bit of take up, and it's very crisp break. I will post some video footage after this live post. I got it with my little action camera here that wouldn't work more than 40 seconds before dying because it's got a shitty ass battery, because it's a Chinese make small camera. So this camera actually mounts to the arm of your glasses. So it's actually really cool, but the battery is shit. But yeah, loving this weapon. When I bought this, it came with 4 Tapco mags. Everybody shits on Tapco, but I had no problems with them. Doesn't wobble, doesn't cause any misfeeds or anything like that. The brake on this thing is really cool. I was expecting fire to shoot out. I didn't see anything in the camera footage. It hit. I got it to hit where I wanted it to hit. And again, this is clear, right? So what I'll do now is I'll take it apart, and maybe I could do it now. I could do it now. In fact, let's do it now. Let's do it now. So make sure it's clear. It is clear. Okay, I'm gonna pull this cover off here. Try not to get my work clothes dirty. You know that's not gonna happen. Anytime you don't want to get dirty, you're gonna get dirty. And again, these are my work clothes, so I don't really want carbon getting on these. Okay, spring, recoil spring. What I wanted to do is I wanted to quickly look at, dang it. Yeah, that's not all that. Looks good on one side, the other side is not. So I'm not sure if you guys can see that right there. Where the hammer hits, you can see it kind of mushrooming a little bit. That's a common problem. I could take a Dremel and I could Dremel that down. From what I understand, this doesn't happen until you federalize, or you go through that process of meeting that the constraints. So this has a Tapco trigger. The trigger, the hammer must be harder than what the metal is for this piece here. So it didn't mushroom until you added the US spec trigger. That's not a fault of the gun. That's a fault of the compliance. If shit doesn't start breaking or mushrooming until you add US spec parts to it, that's a problem with the part, because it's obvious that that piece of metal there, that hammer, that's US spec, is harder than what this metal is made of. That's why it's mushrooming. So what I could do is I could kind of just Dremel that out, and at some point it'll stop anyways. So there's some mushrooming there. Really trying not to get greasy here. So I'm looking at the bolt real quick. I hardly shot enough rounds to actually shouldn't be seeing anywhere whatsoever. I'm trying to get this out. I suppose I can leave it in because I'm not really seeing any damn it. There it is. I can hold this up for you. Trying to wait for this to zoom in. It's a pretty good camera. It's a 1080p camera. I just have to give it time to zoom in. It does not want to zoom in whatsoever. Sometimes you can see it trying, but there's no wear. And I am not going to clean this. I did lube it before, and I just when I oh man, shit. There you go. But anyways, I lubed this up following just general instructions on how to do this. I'm gonna put this back together real quick. I used grease. Trying to get this in. There you go. Okay. Give me just a second here. Cannot multitask. Okay. There you go. Just want to try and get this out of the way so I can quick get my pants greasy. done in just a second here. There you go. All done. Function check real quick. All done. So I had fun with this gun. There's nothing wrong with this gun. And I have a feeling that the more time I spend with it, the more I'm going to like it. Between my two firearms, I have an AR-556 that I bought maybe a year and a half before that gun. In fact, I bought that when I was still working for Verizon, but it must have been 2016. So maybe 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. That I took this out first. The other one still hasn't had any round shot through it. This is my favorite gun. I will be taking this out again tomorrow to put more rounds through it. I do plan on getting. So this is a non-standard gas tooth. In order for me to get, I would like to have wood, or at least be able to use the mag pull cover for this. But because it's a non-standard length, I can't use either one. So I have to find someone who can make this a standard length for me, or I have to do it myself. Eventually I want to change this, and very soon, maybe this weekend, I will be looking for the hardware to put for mounting a red dot sight. So I have a red dot sight that I purchased, Romeo from 6 Hour. I plan to be using that with this. I just need to get the hardware. And from my understanding, it's pretty easy to get that installed. It's better than having something mounted on this, because this is it's not stable enough, right? So you want your sight hardware to be mounted on a stable platform. But anyways, looking for something to wipe my hands off with. I will keep you guys apprised of any more info that I have regarding this particular gun. So again, we shot maybe 36 rounds out of it, no issues whatsoever. We have it sighted in, it's zeroed now, and we're going to take it to the range tomorrow for an hour of fun, probably shooting at 25 yards, because again, that's about all I can see. I can't see any further than that. Sorry, I'm 50 years old. Some things about my body are changing, and whether I like it or not, it's happening. So it's not anything that I'm going to be worried about. I just have to make adjustments. But anyways, that's it.